Hi everyone, Tony Tonkin here from Child Protection Party. I wanted to have a conversation with you about Munchausen's by proxy. Now, over the years I've experienced a number of people who have been diagnosed inappropriately with Munchausen's, and that has resulted in their children being removed. Inappropriately, I believe, but it's something that we need to have a discussion over. I was having a conversation with a woman during the week who experienced a psychiatrist who diagnosed her with Munchausen's, which meant that her children were removed from her for a period of time. It was later evident that those children had suffered from some sort of a set of physical ailments which had nothing to do with the mother, and that those ailments were entirely genetic. So the inappropriate diagnosis of Munchausen's, particularly by social workers who have a version of who the mother is and therefore decide that they're looking for any opportunity that they can to justify the removal of a child, is of great concern to all of us. So I'm going to have a conversation about, firstly, I think what Munchausen's looks like and why it is that we call it a fictitious disorder. And then I'll look at some research that has come out that discusses a couple of cases where Munchausen's has been inappropriately diagnosed and where children therefore have been removed. So I'll just bring you to the first of those articles, and we'll have a look here at what the definition is. So we can just be clear about what Munchausen's is and how it is defined, if you like. So it's a mental disorder in which a person, it's also called a fictitious disorder incidentally, a mental disorder in which a person repeatedly and deliberately acts as if they have a physical or mental illness when they are not really sick. Munchausen syndrome is considered a mental illness because it is associated with severe emotional difficulties. Munchausen syndrome, named after the Baron Munchausen, who just made stuff up. Most of the symptoms in people with Munchausen syndrome is related to physical illness, symptoms such as chest pain, stomach problems, or so on. And where it becomes a little bit more complicated is where Munchausen's is used as a means by which we can say that a parent is imposing illness on a child by either injecting them or feeding them some sort of substance which causes an illness, even though Munchausen's basically can be identified as a respiratory problem which can be caused by smothering and by certain terrible things that might happen to the child. Now, I'm not suggesting for a moment that Munchausen's doesn't exist. I'm not in a position to be able to do that. There's probably plenty of evidence around to prove that there are parents who will impact their children in such a way that it causes an illness, so that the parent becomes seen as this concerned parent and the focus becomes upon the parent who's seeking all this help for a child. Now, the thing to remember is that if we're thinking in that way, if we're thinking that this is a means by which a parent can become embedded in this child's life in a medical way, so that doctors and other people can gather around this child, make a fuss of the child, and therefore usually the mother, even though I have noticed from some of the research that this isn't just about women. Men have been known to do the same. In fact, it's not necessarily women also. All the time it's a pretty much even divide, so it's not a condition that sits amongst women specifically, so we need to note that to start with. However, that's where it's generally identified, particularly in the child protection system. So we have a mother who is concerned about their child, or a parent, I should say, who is concerned about their child, and that is the starting point, that a parent is concerned about the health of a child, usually a child under the age of 18 months. So as a result, the parent takes this child to the authorities to have the child checked out. Now, in doing so, the parent can seem enthusiastic. Also, as you'll read later, a parent may be extremely well versed in medical procedures. They might have been a nurse, or they might have done a lot of reading around what's been happening for their child. They've got all the information, they present that information to the medical practitioners, and then the medical practitioners often will misconstrue what this parent is all about. Now, I want to say the reason why I'm raising this as an issue now is that as this becomes more and more prevalent and is used by the child protection system as a reason for removing a child, we just need to be more mindful of the way that it plays out so that we can address the issues that have been raised in relation to a parent and the diagnosis of Munchausen's. Unfortunately, there are occasions where social workers will see the characteristics that might look like Munchausen's, diagnose it as Munchausen's themselves without having a look at any of the underlying issues that may sit there in relation to the parent, in relation to the child, and certainly in relation to the medical conditions that that child finds themselves in, which probably do not have anything to do specifically with the mother, but they leap to that conclusion. Now, there's a couple of examples of this which I'm going to bring up now. And I don't know whether you can see these specifically on the screen, but I'll read them out to you. So these are a couple of case studies that were done in this particular article. During one of the hospital stays, a tentative diagnosis of MSBP, which is Munchausen's, was made based on the tenacity of the medical problems and the staff's perceptions of the mother. They described her as unusually attached to her infant. So we don't know what unusually attached mean. It could be simply an extremely caring, thoughtful, considerate mother. Her insistence on being present when tests were performed was interpreted as eagerness to see pain inflicted. That's not the case at all. This is just about a parent being concerned or wanting to be with the child at the point whereby that child was receiving treatment. And she was too insistent on medical treatment. Now, each of these three areas that they've identified could be about a very concerned parent. That is all. Nothing more could be drawn from that, perhaps, but these people have. The mother's use of medical terminology, as I said before, was viewed as evidence of an unhealthy interest in her son's condition. The child was placed under constant surveillance, with the mother permitted to visit only under strict nursing supervision. Her other children were barred from the room. The staff continually documented observations during the supervised visits. For example, mother is very resentful, which one would be if people are insisting that you've got these particular conditions, and where particularly they insist that you can't access your child because they consider that you have Munchausen's. Mother is very resentful. The child's condition only worsened. Eventually, a consultant diagnosed the boy with Costman syndrome, a type of immune deficiency. The mother was permitted to resume unrestricted contact. But had the child not been diagnosed by a doctor with this particular condition, the nightmare would have continued for the mother. And so we can see how this can extend into a child protection case and the mother consequently removed. Now, we also have, they also say there was confusion concerning whether MSBP was an item in the child's differential diagnosis or the staff's way of describing personal characteristics of the mother. So, was it real? Or was it just that the staff had defined the mother in a certain way, which made it look like she fitted with Munchausen's? And so we wind up then with a conflated view of who the mother is and how that is going to necessarily impact the treatment of a child. Just to go on from there, she was concerned, understandably, that the lingering issues of MSBP in the official record might deter healthcare providers from thoroughly investigating possible medical cause of the child because it became ill again and might predispose them to treat her as an abuser. Now, I know that has actually happened. The woman I was speaking to during the week, she noted that they went back 30 years to a history which had identified her inappropriately by a psychiatrist as having Munchausen's, and therefore any other event that happened in her life. This issue was tagged, and she was labelled as this basically an uncaring mother, whereas it was evident later on that the children did suffer from some form of physical disability. I'll just see whether I do have another. No, I think that's all I had there. So I think the point that I want to make is that we need to be really careful about some of these diagnoses. We also need to be mindful that if someone does make a diagnosis in relation to Munchausen's, that you find another psychiatrist or another mental health professional who can identify other issues that may be there, which have got nothing to do with Munchausen's, but certainly might have a lot to do with the reasons why you're so wanting to care for a child. Now, a lot of people that have had child protection issues in the past, that is, they themselves might have been in care, a lot of those parents may find that they're extremely concerned about a child because they don't want their child to experience in any form what they experienced when they were younger. So their attachment to a child is significant. And sometimes for the parents that I've worked with, they've specifically needed to have that attachment because in their world, it's the only time that they've had unconditional love. So you can understand the reasons why a parent may be super attached to their child as a result of perhaps some of their past experiences, but simply that never gets explored. So what we've noticed in this case is that the medical practitioners, the nurses and other staff members and probably social workers along the way identify a mother based on their subjective view of who this person is and that attachment to Munchausen's. As a result of that, the mother becomes labelled, she becomes seen as a danger to the child, and consequently, in many cases, the children are removed. It's sad, but it is true. Now, what we'd like you to do at Child Protection Party is we'd like you to contact us, so you can email us here, and we'd like to have a conversation with you about any experiences you've had where you've been identified or diagnosed with Munchausen's. Any experience you've had where your children have been removed because the department or others have simply said that you've got these behaviours that they believe are putting the child at risk. And we'd also like to say, because this is going to YouTube as well, that if you're on YouTube, could you please subscribe and ring the bell for future notifications so we can keep you up to date as to what's happening in the field of, in the area anyway, of child protection. And if you wish to contact us to be able to register with the Child Protection Party, please go to our webpage, register, become a member of the Child Protection Party as well, so that you can help us to continue to do the work that we do. So thanks everybody, thanks for being with me. Take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, be safe.